As we gather to pray this evening, we do keep as one of our intentions those who are suffering from the effects of the storms on Friday. There's still many people without power. My mom was out without power until yesterday evening, but she got it restored. But I know that many people are still struggling with that, and so we keep them in our thoughts and our prayers. It did affect our school, and so all of our kids were home from school on Friday, and then we had to make a decision about whether or not to have the fish fry. And so we waited for the second line of storms to go through, but decided to move forward and go ahead and have the fish fry. It was good. It was a good crowd. It was smaller than normal, but it was still a good group of people. And I was able to talk to a number of different families that were there. Many of them told me that after a day at home with the kids, they were ready to get out of the house. And one of the families that I was talking to, as we were sitting there, I was talking to the dad, and his little daughter sitting next to him turned to him and looked and said, "Dad, look at me." The mom turned to me and said, "We can spend hours at home entertained by her asking us to look at her," right? That's something that's deep within each of us, right? In a child, it's that momentary of desire for recognition, but within each of us, we desire to be seen, we desire to be recognized, we desire to be known, and we desire to be loved. And that is something God's placed within us. It can get off the rails sometimes, and it can be something that becomes all about our own personal power or prestige or the adulation that people may give to us or the fame or popularity, right? But in the essence, it's really an opportunity for us, that part of us that wants to connect with others. And there's a good way to do that, and sometimes there are bad ways for us to do that. At the fish fry, one of the things that happened was that the fry guys who rate different fish fries in the Archdiocese of Louisville came and they awarded to John Coons and to our fish fry team one of the 3 Fish Fries of the Decade awards. And so that was a great honor for them, and John received it, and he was so moved that he cried, right? It was unexpected. And it was a way to see him and to recognize all the effort that he's put in for so many years and that of his team to be able to recognize that. And I was very proud of him. But we can sometimes get into that idea that we need to seek our own glory. In today's gospel reading, we hear the story of the Transfiguration where Jesus appears in glory to the disciples, to his apostles that are with him. And we can sometimes have the misunderstanding. We think about a human sense of glory when we think of that. Like it is that sense of power or prestige or popularity or fame when we think of glory. But for Jesus, he shows us that transfiguration is really connected to the gift of love that was in the Paschal mystery, in his suffering, death, and resurrection. It's the glory of the resurrection, but he has to go through the gift of himself for us to get to that point in glory. And so it establishes for us in our desire to be seen, some new thing to seek, to really seek to be seen, not just for our own attributes, but for how we forgive and how we love, right? That is the glory of God in our midst, that it is God's glory for us. And sometimes as we journey through this season of Lent and we go through different things, it's a good thing for us to recognize that on the second Sunday of Lent, we're early in that Lenten journey, right? Today is also the beginning of our stewardship renewal for St. Patrick's. And so as part of that, it's also kind of a beginning. We're kind of in the midst of that, or we're just beginning that. You know, as a disciple of Jesus, we're following where he leads. And sometimes when we talk about stewardship, we can think of it as a program or a process. And sometimes we can think a little bit broader than that and think of stewardship as a way of life, that it affects all the decisions that we make. But I'd like to suggest one way to think of it is as a journey, that we're each on our own personal journey of stewardship. And as we go through this season of stewardship renewal at St. Pat's, that it's an opportunity for us to say, well, what is the next best step in my stewardship journey? Just like as we go through Lent, what's the next best step in my relationship with God? Or as a disciple, what's my next best step in following Jesus? And so we're all on this journey. And as we go through this journey, whichever one of those 3 journeys you want to apply it to, I think there's 3 things that I'd like to suggest to you that are important markers for that journey. You know, when I was in Scouts, the motto for Scouts was be prepared. Everybody say be prepared. So these are things to be prepared for on the journey. The first one is to be prepared to move. Everybody say move. The second is to be prepared to be called. Everybody say be called. And the third one is to be prepared to serve. Everybody say to serve. So to be prepared to move, to be prepared to be called, and to be prepared to serve. These three things can help us along that journey. Being prepared to move, we see in the gospel reading that the apostles that are with Jesus want to build tents, right? They want to stay on the mountaintop experience. In the first reading, Abraham is in his homeland with his father and his kinsmen. He is comfortable in that space. But God calls us always to move. A journey is not standing in one spot, it's keeping going, right? We have to be prepared to move, and the thing that moves us is love. So the key to being prepared to move is growing in love. That we understand that love of God and love of neighbor can move our hearts so that we can move from our current spot to where God's calling us to go. The second one is being prepared to be called. Right? And so we know that Jesus called his disciples. In the first reading, we hear that God calls Abraham. In the second reading, we are all called in Jesus Christ to a holy life, right? That God calls us. And one of the things with Abraham is that God was calling Abraham when he was 75 years old. I don't know about you, but at 75, you might think you're kind of settled, right? You've seen most of what there is to see. And God's calling Abraham at that moment to set out, right? And it was another 25 years before his son Isaac was born and another 100 years before he died. I don't want to live that long. But he had to recognize that call in his life. Each of us, too, are called. And when we're called, we may not understand where we're going. Right? For Abraham, it was to a land that I will show you. He didn't know the roadmap or the plan, but he was called to trust. And so our key to being ready or being prepared to be called is faith. It's growing in faith, growing in trust of God, even when we don't see the way or we don't understand it all. That we're called to place our trust in him. The third one is being prepared to serve. And so to serve, one of the things that entails for us is going beyond our circle of concern to reach out to those beyond us, whether in our own lifetime or beyond that, right? So for Abraham, in the first reading, God promised him that he was going to be a great nation. God promised him that through him, all the nations of the world would be blessed. At the end of his life, he had one son by Sarah and 2 grandchildren. That was not a blessing for the whole world yet. But Abraham dedicated and served and gave himself for that vision that went far beyond himself. When we're called to serve, it is for being beyond ourselves, going out of ourselves to make a difference in the lives of other people. And so we are all called to serve. And the key to that for us is generosity. It's growing in generosity, in a heart that is open and loosely attached to the things that we're seeking to be able to really give of ourselves for the good of others, maybe even beyond our lifetimes. That we're seeking to go outside of our circle, whether the circle of our lives or the circle of our family, to reach out to others who are in need. And so as we go through this process and we're each on this journey, these 3 things, growing in love, growing in faith, and growing in generosity, are things that lead us along the path of our discipleship, of our Lenten journey, or of stewardship. Tonight we do have stewardship witnesses with us, and so it's Tony and Maggie Bita, and they're going to share some of their own journey of stewardship and their own growth in faith and love and generosity.
Good evening, everyone. Good to see you. Good to be here. I'm Tony.
And I'm Maggie Bita.
And we're honored and humbled to be before you this evening to reflect on our experience in providing time, talent, and treasure to St. Patrick's Catholic community, which is our church home, and we consider our extended family. Maggie will give you more of that history in a moment. From my perspective and my spiritual formation, those have been enriched through my participation and involvement in the many ministries of St. Pat's. That includes a Habitat for Humanity build, the Men's Club and its various projects, as member of the Stewardship Committee, and recently serving on Parish Council. Now, in all of those encounters, there was an expectation on my part that there would be some social encounters associated with that outreach and some fellowship opportunities. And I think all of those expectations were fulfilled, of course, in great measure. But there was also somewhat of a nice surprise about those opportunities, and that was the ability to talk informally with other Catholics about their faith, about the way the Holy Spirit moves in their lives, their relationship with God and Jesus Christ. So my contributions of time, treasure, and on rare occasion, talent have enabled me to have important conversations about my faith with other men and women, my peers, who are on the same journey. Those are important conversations that would not occur at all if not for participation in these ministries. So when I think about stewardship of St. Patrick's, those are the small miracles that come to mind. And I pray you will be blessed by the same small miracles as you consider your participation in the 2023 season of stewardship. Now, Maggie, your turn.
So as Tony said, I am deeply humbled that we were asked to participate and speak here. Tony and I met in D.C. I'm a native Louisvillian, and we moved back home in 2018. And honestly, after we lived in St. Matthews, members of Holy Trinity, we love that area, but we decided to move a little further out. And the way it happened is St. Pat's was the closest church. But it has been truly an amazing experience. This is an incredible parish, incredible priests. I honestly have never had priests that are so friendly and truly are friends. It's a new experience for me, and it's been just tremendous. It's a warm and welcoming community here. So I started my journey, and I thought I'll start right here at the church. And I joined the Social Ministries Committee, the Refugee Ministry, participate in the Women's Circle, and then most recently I helped with Catholic Charities Relay fundraiser event. And that was something I hadn't done before. I'd been, but I had never participated, and it was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. And I always thank God because I know He has blessed me and my family so incredibly with just so many blessings. And I know that part of stewardship is, and as Father Jeff said, it's truly a journey. It's a journey every day for me that I need to give back. And when I do that, I think the feeling that I get of helping others, whether it be here at church, in the community, family, friends, it makes me closer to God. I have a true sense of being so much a stronger relationship and just a sense of closeness to Him. And so I always want to ask Him, and I pray and ask Him for His wisdom and guidance in how I can be the best example of His love and how I can share that with others around me and around us here at church and elsewhere. So as I continue on the journey, I will keep everyone here at St. Pat's in my prayers and hope that we can all try and be the best example of His love. Thank you.
Maggie and Tony, thank you once again. This is the fourth time that they've given their witness talk. If you think it's hard sitting through one of my homilies, they've had to do it 4 times this weekend. So thank you. Let's give them another round of applause for that. So we do keep those kind of signposts, if you will, on the journey of growing in love, growing in faith, and growing in generosity in front of us as part of the ways that guide us as we go through the stewardship renewal process or Lent or even in our lives as disciples of Jesus Christ. We are in a season of growth at St. Pat's, and sometimes we are tempted to use the easy metrics to figure out what that growth is. And those easy metrics are the numbers that you can count. How many new families have joined the parish? What's our total registrations? How much money is being given? How many people are attending Mass every weekend? And we do track those things. But we have to recognize that that's not real growth. Real growth happens in each of our hearts. Real growth is much deeper than those numbers. It happens within us. And as we continue on this journey, as we continue to pray and to figure out, well, where is God calling us? Where are we going to move? How are we going to serve? That as we try to figure that out, the gospel gives us one final important piece of instruction. It is the words of God the Father over Jesus Christ in his transfiguration. This is my beloved Son, with whom I'm well pleased. Listen to him.